All right, so with that, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the Cougar Mountain Denali Payroll webinar series for April 30th, 2014. Today's webinar, we're going to be talking about the reports in payroll, which we'll get into that in just a moment. If you have any questions or comments that you want to make during the webinar, then be sure to type your questions or comments in the chat field. We're going to keep everybody's mics muted so that we can get through this because we're kind of limited on our time. Type your questions in chat, and then at the end we'll get through your questions, as many as we can, before we run out of time. All right, my name is Jeremy Beislein. I am going to be your presenter today here for this webinar today. I've been with Cougar Mountain for a little over 6 months now. I am a systems trainer, so I'm the one that trains all you guys on how to use the Cougar Mountain Denali software. And we're going to be focusing on wrapping up the payroll software today in this webinar. So today's webinar, we're going to be going over the reports in payroll, all of the historical reports, and the different reports that you run after all of your transactions have been entered and posted in. Up to year to date and things like that. Of course, our first report is just an employee list report. Second one is our benefit deduction report, and then the leave report. Third report is going to be our employee history report. That one's the big one that shows you the history of the employee paycheck transactions. Then we'll go over the payroll tax, Eftps, and W2 reports. And last but not least, we're going to cover Atrix in Denali Payroll. Atrix is the program that Denali uses to process your payroll tax forms with the IRS and with your state taxing agency. And then at the end, we'll answer your questions, as many as we can, before we run out of time. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started here with the Denali Payroll reports here. Okay, so we've already, in the previous webinars, we've already gone through how to set up payroll, enter your employee information, enter your payroll transactions, and we've got a bunch of information already entered in, so now we've got enough that we should be able to bring up our reports. With Denali Payroll, as with the other Denali modules, you've got the navigation screen over here on the left side. This is very handy for when you're running your Denali applications. For reports, you've got this option here for reporting on the left side navigation. When we click on this option here, it brings up a list of all the different reports that we can run here in Denali Payroll. This list also corresponds with the same menu up here at the top. When you click on the reports, you can also bring up the same reports here. And these are all the different reports that are available in the Denali Payroll. So with that, we'll start with the first one. If you use the navigation, what's neat about this is if you click just a single click on here, this gives you a sample of what that report is going to look like right here in the display screen in your preview pane. All of these different reports, these are the different samples of what the report looks like. So you can kind of get an idea of what this report looks like, and it kind of gives you an idea if this is the report we're wanting to run or not. Now, to actually run the report, you double-click on the report option here, and then it brings up your report parameter options. This is where Denali Payroll is asking you, we're going to run an employee list report. What do you want to be included in this employee list report? Do we want the detailed employee list with all the employee information, or do we just want a simple employee list with just their names and phone numbers? Detailed has all the other information there. Do we want just active employees in the list? Do we want only inactive employees? Do we want only terminated? These are the different status types. Or do we want to include all employees in this list? If we're running a detailed, you can have a separate page for each employee because there's a lot of information for each employee that will be on this report. This might make it easier to sort through if you do a separate page for each employee on the detailed report. You can sort by employee number, or you can sort by employee name, if that would be easier for displaying on the report. You can sort by department or by pay type. And then like the other Denali modules, you can specify what you want included in this report. Here you can say, I only want to include certain employees in this report. You can do a range of employees start to end. Or you can do it by employee name, a certain range of employees by name. Here you can say I only want a certain department. We can go on here and we can say let's only do the administrative department here. If you select that, this is only going to show us employees that are in the administrative department. Or you can do specific status codes here. Now we have the status type up here, but some of you may have more than one code for each type. So down here you would put the specific status code if you want to just show that particular status code, list of employees in that status code. But for this demonstration we're going to run all employees for all types. So we're going to just leave these fields blank and then we run the report here. You can go to your printer, or I have mine set to default to the screen because I just want to look at it on the screen rather than actually printing the report out. So we'll give this just a moment to bring up the report here, and there it is. Now this is the detailed report. As you can see here, this lists your employee number, here, your employee name, the department they work in, their status code, their phone number, and their pay type. Then it gets into more specific information, their address, the emergency contact information. We don't have anything for this employee there, but if this employee had emergency contact information, it would be here on this report. Their pay frequency, their hire date, termination date, which is blank since this employee has not been terminated, their birth date, check location, site location, all the different information you can see here on the detailed report. Down here we have the section for tax code information. This is all the different tax codes that this employee has associated with this particular employee, and I didn't want to do that, but you can do that. If you click on the actual tax code, it brings up just that section of the report separately on a separate report if you're displaying it on screen. We also have over here this section, and we did it again. This brings up the last day they were paid. This is their last paycheck basically, date, amount, check number, the last time they had a raise. Then down here we have their pay rate information. Well, I click on the code and it brings that up every time. The pay rate information for this employee is listed here at the bottom of the report. This is just for this one employee. Now since I did page break per employee, we go to the next page to bring up our next employee here. Let's find one here that may have more than one state tax code. Pine Tree, Eugene Paris, Zulu, all the different employees here. Here's one right here, John Archer. He's got a local and a state tax code. I know I had one in here that had more than one pay rate. Here we go. This one shows a little more information. Here's an example of an employee that has multiple pay rates, multiple state tax codes, local tax code, federal. So as you can see, this report will list everything that's applicable to this employee as detailed. All right, moving on. Just to quickly show you the condensed employee list. This basically is just simply the employee name and their phone number. If you want to just do a quick list of your employees to get their contact information, to give them a call, that's basically what we have here. So there's their name, and then there's their phone number here. Now, of course, it has their number, employee number, department they're in, and their status. That's also on here as well on their pay type. But this is just a line-by-line list of all of your employees here. Contact information is just the phone number on this one. So that's what the condensed report looks like. All right, so the next report we have is our benefits deductions report. Again, there's a sample of what the report will look like. When you double-click, you can bring up your parameters window. Basically, what information do we want on this report? Similar to the list, you can do a detailed or a condensed report. You can show on this report all the different benefit and deduction types, or you can just specify, I only want to show benefits. You can uncheck the others here if you don't want to show the others here. If you want to show benefits and deductions only, but not additions, tips, or garnishments, you can select what you would like on this report. The date range default is custom, but you've got these different date range options here. Today, this week, this month, this fiscal year, last year, next fiscal year, things like that. Or custom, then you would put in the custom date range, starting to end. Basically, we have this set up to go from the first to the last day of the first quarter. We're going to put the first from the beginning of the year to date, basically, is what we'll put there. Page break by employee number, that's optional. Skip employees without benefit deduction codes. If you check that, employees that don't have any benefit or deduction codes will not be on this report. We can do subtotals. We can do group and total by code. Several different options here. And then, of course, the parameter of what specifically do you want included in this report. So we bring up the report here. And this is an example of what the benefits deductions report looks like here. So here we have for Jonathan Archer, we have 401 benefit code. This brings up a list of the different benefit deductions that apply to this particular employee here. The code type, how it's applied, its percentage of gross, the pay periods that it applies to. These are pay periods per month. If you have 5 pay periods in a month, then it's all 5 of them. Or if you only apply to the first 1 or 2, it would say yes or no as applicable, as it's set up. This basically is a report of how the code is set up. And then it also shows on here the amount remaining, the last amount used, and the total amount that he has accrued on this particular employee. That's the benefit code. We've got the deduction code. We've got the health insurance benefit and deduction. Scrolling on down. Then we have a summary here for Archer. This is the total for all of the codes here for this particular employee. There's the summary. State of Kentucky. Let's see, I think I skipped Eastman. There we go. Summary for Archer is just this one item here. Then we move on to Eastman to do the detail. Go down to the bottom and we have the summary for Eastman. 1,819, last amount used and total amount. Then we move on to the next employee. Then at the end of the report, this is just our report parameters. We'll go back 1 page. Summary for Tucker. Okay. All right. So that basically shows you the total for each employee. And then, of course, the last page, it just prints our report parameters. Okay. So that's our benefits deductions report. Then our next report is a leave report. This is historical posted data, year-to-date information for the employee leave codes, what they've accrued, what they have available year-to-date. Now, if you have leave time that rolls over, such as vacation or PTO time that rolls over from a previous year, that would still be included in the amount remaining on this report for the employees. But the accrued amount is only the current accrued amount year-to-date that you'll see on here. Again, you can set the parameters of what you want included on this report, which leave types you want included, and so forth. So we'll go ahead and run this report here. Just going to go to screen. All right, so we start with our first employee, Archer here. These are all of the attached codes for Archer. The code, the description, and the type of code that it is. Now we have the current rate. These are the current accrual rates. This is how often it accrues. And this rate per period. This amount accrues quarterly, 8 hours quarterly. PTO accrues at 4.6154 hours per period. That's for every payroll run. It'll add 4.6154 hours of PTO to this employee. Right here shows how much he's accrued year to date, and the accumulation limit is the total amount he's allowed to accrue. Once he hits that limit, it stops accruing until he uses some. Now here you have the totals. These totals are done by type. We got holiday, other, PTO, and sick. This is what's accrued of these types. This is how much he has used, and this is how much is remaining. The maximum limit that he can accrue, it shows here. We move on to our next employee, Eastman, right there. This is a good example of an employee that has accrued an amount, but his remaining amount is more than his accrued amount. The reason for that is because it's carried over from a previous year, is what this is showing. So we have an accrued amount of 72 year to date, the remaining amount of 164. Now keep in mind, these amounts were manually entered in when we entered in historical data setting up the payroll. The automatic amounts will keep adding to the accrued and adding to the remaining. Now of course the remaining is more than the limit, so when he uses it, it's only going to let him use a maximum of 120 that is available for him to use. Sabrina Goodnight, next employee Annika Hansen, and so forth. These are the different options here. All right, so there's our leave codes report. Okay, now our employee history report. This one is probably the most common report you're going to run in Denali Payroll when you're looking for what happened. If you're looking for transaction information, that what happened, this report is very handy to bring out what happened, what has posted through on the employee paychecks. Again, you can set your parameters: detailed, date range, sort by employee number, status active, page break by employee, if you want to do a separate page for each employee that's in the report, or you can uncheck that if you don't. Now if you want to run this report for just specific employees, you can, by number, by name, or if you want to run it for specific departments or specific status codes, just like the other reports there. So now when we run this report, this is going to show us the employee history report of all transactions that have posted through for these employees that are selected for this report. In this case, all employees, because we told it to do all active employees. And it shows each individual transaction, because we did detailed. If we do summary, it only shows the total for each employee. But the detailed report will show each transaction for each employee on the report. So here we have our first employee, Archer. This is the first transaction for Archer on this report. This was basically a paycheck dated 4/10/2014, check number 1006, and this is the detailed information for that paycheck that posted. We got your pay rates. This looks real similar to our edit report and also to the check stub. You've got that right here on the history report. Then we go down here. Here's the next paycheck for Archer, 4/23. There's the date, check number, and all the check information here. Pay rates, tax information, employee taxes, employer taxes, benefit deductions, all of the totals for the different pay types, just like we saw in the edit report. Now, the next section is the summary for the employee. We've got all the transactions for that employee. We go to the summary. Now, of course, we ran to the bottom of the page, so the summary is going to be on the next page for this employee. Here we have the summary for all transactions just for Archer. We got the total regular amount, total rate code summary it shows here, total taxes, and then the total benefit deductions for Archer. Now we move on to our next employee, Eastman. This is the first transaction for Eastman. We got several pay rates on this one. And then we have the summary on Eastman. The rate code summary, we ran out of page again, so we go to the next page, and there's the rest of the summary for Eastman. Taxes, benefit deductions. Good example of a multi-state employee there. So that's our employee history. We'll go to the last page here, bring up our parameters. I want to go to the last page because I want to show you guys the total report summary. Back up one more here. So there's the summary for Tucker. And now here's our report totals. Rate codes, total pay rates, total taxes. Got several states since our demonstration data uses several states here. Total benefit deductions here. We ran out of page, so we go to the last page to get the rest of the benefit deductions. And there is our totals here. And then, of course, our parameters at the bottom. So that's your employee history report there. And of course, in Denali Payroll, we have the option to reprint the pay stub. We talked about that last week. You can reprint a paycheck stub that way. All right, so I'm going to go through these other three reports real quick because we are getting short on time and I need to cover Atrix as well today. So we got our taxes payable report. This report just basically shows all of the taxes that are due and payable for the payroll runs that you have done for the date range that you put in here. So we put the date range here. You can do it specific by tax code or you can just do all tax codes. We'll run custom and we'll run it through to the year to date, April 30th here. This report will just show us basically all of the tax codes of what has accrued. Federal tax code, we have withholding tax, employee Social Security, employee Medicare, additional Medicare tax is 0. That's for employees who earn over $200,000. Employer Medicare and Social Security, employer unemployment, there's our 940 tax. Now we got our Idaho state tax code here. We got all of our others here. The reason I'm picking on Idaho is because it's the only one we're doing unemployment on with our demo data here. So, oh, and I did that again. So there's our Idaho unemployment. But you have all the different tax codes listed here separately. And then you got the totals here at the bottom for all tax codes. All right, the Eftps report. This is real similar to our Eftps report that we run every time we run payroll, except for this one is the historical report. This is for payroll information that has already posted. This report is very good for when you're running your 941 quarterlies. If you want to compare this information with the 941, this is a very good report to run that. Now this is only for the federal tax code. So we'll pull that up here. And this is our individual tax amounts for each employee, total for this employee, individual amounts for each paycheck, and then the total for each employee here. As you can see, this is the detailed report. And on the last page of this report, we have our report totals. These are the numbers that should match your 941 reports. This is basically your total Eftps payments for the entire date range of this report, which as we can see here was from January 1st to March 31st, which translates to first quarter. So this is a very handy report for when you're getting ready to do your quarterly tax 941s. W2 Preview Report. This is a handy report for when you're doing your W2s at the end of the year. This report is real simple. I'm just going to show you the preview here. Basically, this just shows the W2 fields, A, F, and so forth. And then box 1 is this amount, box 2 is this amount, box 3, 4, 5, and 6, and so forth. Box 12, the code and the amount. Box 15, 16, 17 for your state information. This is really handy for when you're running your W2s at the end of the year. If you want to preview what's going to print in those W2s, you can run this report. Now we come to tax reports. Now this is basically our tax reports. This is Atrix. Cougar Mountain Denali Payroll, the Denali Payroll system uses Atrix to actually file your quarterly tax reports. This is when you're going to actually run the 941s, the 940s, your quarterly state reports, your annual state reports, and your W2 reports. They'll all be done in Atrix. So to run Atrix, you just double-click on the tax reports here, and then it asks you which report are we running here. For this time of year, most of you are probably running your 941s. Actually, today's April 30th, so they probably should be done by now. So we're going to use that as an example here. So when you run the tax report here, it asks you which tax report we're running. Then you click Display. This will launch the Atrix application here. So we'll give this just a moment here to bring up Atrix. I'm going to say yes because I was working on this before. All right, so here is Atrix, and this basically brings up the actual tax report we're going to be filing with the tax agency, in this case the IRS, since this is the 941 report. And as you can see, it brings up the 941 form itself right on the screen with all of your numbers pre-filled in as extracted out of your payroll data. I'm going to say evaluate here because we don't actually have a registered copy of Atrix. Now this right here just gives you the steps. Basically, you're going to review and edit the report as needed. Any fields that are in red, you'll need to manually type in the information in those fields. Review the report for accurate values. Any fields in blue, it automatically pulled that information in from Denali Payroll, but you can edit that information on this form if needed. And then the next step, you're going to print out a copy for your records, and the third step is to actually file the report with the tax agency. Atrix gives you several filing options, which we'll go over here in just a moment. Now it says here, please complete required red fields. Enter the information in the fields that are red, and it automatically puts your cursor in the first red field here, in this case field 11, the total deposits for this quarter. This is how much you actually paid to the IRS or through the Eftps tax payment system for the 941 taxes. So I'll go ahead and enter that in here for demonstration purposes. And that's what it should be. And we tab, and that basically turns that field to blue, which means that we have now entered the information needed. That's page 1. Now we go to page 2. Page 2 basically tells us we need to check one of these 3 boxes. This will be in red when you first come in here. You either have to check this box or this box if you're a monthly depositor, or if you're a semi-weekly depositor, of course, you'll check the 3rd box. Now, when you check the 3rd box, what it does here is it tells you you must fill out Schedule B. Most payroll runs will probably be a semi-weekly, which will require Schedule B, which is page 3 of our form. So on Schedule B, you'll just go ahead and verify that the information here is correct, which in this case, this should be correct for our demonstration data. Once all of the information is correct, you can even go back and verify each page, make sure everything looks good. There's page 1 again, page 2. Some of the other fields that will require you to check is part 4. Check either yes or no. If you check yes, you'll have to input the information for the person that is a third-party designee. Part 5, you're going to need to fill in the person's title, the person's name that's filling out the report, person's phone number, and then the date. Once we get all of this information filled in, page 3 looks good, then we go on to our next step. And this tells you verify the information is correct. This is your final chance to verify. If everything looks good, we click agree. If everything doesn't look good, we click double check and it kicks us back. We can make any changes. When we're ready to go, we just go ahead and click agree. Now, basically, this is your copy of this form. It says, do you want to print a copy for me? You just click on the print button here, and it'll print out your copy. Remember, this is page 3. We can look at all the pages here as we need. So you print out your copy, and then once you've printed out your copy, we go to the next step. The final step is just the filing. Now, Atrix gives you the option to e-file your tax forms. If you want to e-file, you can go ahead and do that, or if not, you can go ahead and print and mail the form in by printing it. If you do want to e-file, there are additional fees for that. So what basically you just click on that and it brings you up to the e-file page that allows you to e-file and enter in your payment information for the additional fees. Now this right here says it's unavailable because we're just in the evaluation mode. We have to register Atrix if we want to go ahead and use their e-file features. But when you do that, it'll bring it up and you can submit that. If you print it out here, we can go ahead and print it instead of e-filing. Printing does not have any additional fees associated with it other than what you pay for the Atrix software itself. Okay, and then when you're finished, you just click finish and it closes out the Atrix and it puts you back to where you were. You're going to use Atrix for 941s, W-2s, 940s, any quarterly state tax reports that you have to file with your state taxing agency, and also most unemployment taxing agencies for your state unemployment agency or Department of Labor's. Those are all included in the Atrix software. All right, so with that, we kind of used up our half hour, so because of that, I'm going to go ahead and give everybody an additional 10 minutes to answer any questions that we may have. Let me go ahead and bring up the questions here. Any questions you may have, now is your chance. Go ahead and type those in chat. Okay, Dick had a question here. When you close out the year, does the history go away? Yes, that is correct. The history itself doesn't actually go away. It'll still be there, but it will not let you bring it up on the history report. In order for the history to go away, you would have to purge the history. But when you close out the year, it's just like the other Denali modules when you're closing out the general ledger. It limits you on what you can run those reports. But there is an option to run the prior year history, and if you haven't purged the history, that information will still be available on the employee history report. All right, so the next question here. It says, can you run the benefit report without the employee name? So basically what you do on that one here, let's see, I need to go to reports, cancel. We're going to run our benefit deduction report here. You can do just a condensed report. From what I'm showing here, it's still going to have the employee's name on there. So I don't think that gives you the option. But what you can do is run the report and then just go to the last page and just print that last page from the report. That should give you just the totals for, yeah, it's still going to show each employee separately. So the benefit report does show each employee, but then you can do just the summary here on the last page. You know what? It doesn't. It's just by employee. This benefit report is specific to employees. So yeah, to answer your question there, Jasmine, nope, the benefit report does require the employee to be on there. Okay, so moving on down here. And yeah, that answers Carol's question too. It would be helpful to have a total for all benefit deductions. That is a good point. Let's see, we can group and total by code. Let's see if that gives us the option there. Include subtotals. We might have those options with these different options here that you can run. So let's test this out here, and we may be able to get that for you here. Okay, let's go to the last page and see what we're showing there. Oh, look at that. There we go, our report totals. On our last page, it gives us all of the different benefit deduction codes in a group here as the total. So there it is. So that answers your question there, Carol, and that may also help you too, Jasmine. When you're running this report, just print the last page only, and it doesn't include all the employees' information separately. It just has the total there. So, okay, so Sarah had a question there where it says he has 164 hours but would be limited to 120 when using them. Basically, Sarah, the way that works is when your employee is accruing time, let's see, I think that was Eastman. We'll bring his up real quick here. When he's accruing time, I'm going to bring that up here real quick. Right here, there he is. If the remaining amount is more than the max limit, it will let you manually enter that remaining amount in, and that means that when he uses it, it just deducts it from the remaining amount. You can manually enter an amount greater than the maximum limit. But the maximum limit, what that does is when he reaches that amount, if the remaining amount is 120 or more, it just stops accruing at that point. So for Eastman, he's not going to be able to accrue any PTO because he's already over his maximum limit until he uses down to where he's under the maximum limit. So that's what that there is. And that remaining amount does carry year to year. So if they carry some over from the previous year and it's already reached the maximum limit, it will not accrue any more in the current year until he uses some of this from remaining from a previous year. which means it won't accrue above the maximum limit. The reason this is more than that is because we manually entered that in. As you can see here, we can manually enter, we can put whatever you want, whatever amount we want in the remaining amount if we want to override for the amount remaining. It just stops accruing once it reaches that limit. So I hope that answers your question. But yeah, you can manually enter that in. And so to answer Mike's question, that kind of should answer yours as well. Whenever they use PTO or use any of these leave times, it deducts it out of the remaining amount. It puts it in the used amount column and deducts it out of the remaining amount. When you're entering your payroll information, it'll update the amount they've used, and it'll deduct it out of the remaining. Now the amount used is reset every year, but the amount remaining is not. That carries forward year to year. The amount accrued is also reset every year when you close out the year. Okay, so with that, I think that's all the questions we have. So that pretty much ends up our Denali Payroll webinar series. I just want to point out, though, that we do have another webinar scheduled for next week at this time. This is going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Pacific on May 7th. This is going to be a special webinar that we're running specifically for the lot tracking feature that was added to the inventory module in the 4.0 release of Denali. So if you are interested in that, be sure to register for this webinar. It's a different webinar you'll have to register for, and we just threw the link to register for this webinar in the chat here. So on your chat there, then go ahead and click on that link, and that will get you registered for this webinar next week for those who are interested in the inventory lot tracking feature in the new Denali 4.0. All right, any questions or comments you may have, go ahead and give us a call, or you can send your questions or comments, email into us. You can also go to our website and click on the feedback link, or you can always contact your sales rep. They're more than willing to help you with any questions you may have. Be sure to keep an eye out for follow-up communications and for access to this webinar recorded presentation. If you've missed any part of this webinar today, you can access it on the website. We'll get that published for you. Also, we'll publish the answers to your questions that were posted today. And with that, I want to thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you next week for the lot number webinar. If not, then that pretty much closes out our payroll webinar series. So keep using your Denali Payroll, and if you have any questions, just let us know. Thank you very much. Have a great day.